Greetings, 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 everyone. Welcome to the stream. We'll continue doing some clickety-clacks for a moment. Good afternoon, Postmatic. Hope you're doing well. I'm doing as well as can be. Let me just finish the clickety-clacking. Good afternoon, Kandari. Hope you're doing well. Save. Okie dokie. You'll probably notice that there is a difference in sound. We have a new microphone. Nothing special, nothing too great. And by that I mean not expensive. Let's change that down a bit there. Okay. But you'll notice that you'll be picking up a lot more ambient noises, like table noises and clicky noises, and even moving my feet around you'll hear now. That is because this is a different type of microphone to the previous one. Just post some links. Alright, so this is a studio style microphone, so it picks up a lot more ambient noise than a normal microphone does, but it allows a much deeper depth of vocals. It picks up a lot more subtleties. Problem with that is it picks up noise from everywhere. I had to move my laptop to the other side of this sound wall because the fans were making too much noise and they were coming through. So that sucked. So yeah, I have also ordered a quieter keyboard to go with this microphone. This is the Rode NT1. Yes. So I mean, this it's designed more for a properly sealed room, sound-wise, which I have. The dynamic mic, which is the Shure SM7B, is very good at reducing ambient noise. This one doesn't. It just eats the ambient noise, and you got to deal with it. So, tip 1 for dealing with sort of microphone is sit still. Tip 2 is you legitimately have to cover everything in voice or noise reduction foam just to make it that much better. But yeah, it's not a bad microphone. I think it cost $110, which came with a shock mount, a little pop filter, and a cable. A nice shielded cable. So all in all, not a bad deal for $110. Problem is you're going to spend a lot more than $110 treating your environment. My environment wasn't too bad, so wasn't at all too much to adapt. But as you can see, I'm moving and adjusting as needed because it's a lot more sensitive. I mean, you can't hear that. But it's because I got so many filters on it. But hopefully it'll lead to, if not the same audio, better audio. One can only hope. But yes, other news. The rental property that we were moving to backed out of the deal, so that was awesome. So now we're stuck with looking for another place. Again, awesome. This week, the wife and I will be visiting a whole bunch of places. That does mean that I'm probably going to have to cut streams short so that we can, in the afternoon, go to these places and give it a bit of a look. Hopefully by the end of the week we find a place and we can start negotiations. But, yes. We seem to be peaking a little bit, I think. But yes, so that is the plan. Testing, testing, testing. Cool. Alrighty. I think we're there. So, also, just randomly, getting back to the microphone, I had to adjust my profile for editing, because each microphone is slightly different than every other microphone, and technically, each microphone is different than the same type of microphone. There's slight inconsistencies between all of them. The more pricey the microphone, the less variance between microphones. The more consistent they are across all the different all the things. Fair enough. I will keep that in mind. Xilus Ictona. Problem is the bot doesn't like our bot doesn't like too many emotes, so it deleted your message, but I did read it. Admiral or Dr. Cadet Chen. Interesting. Very, very interesting. I use a program called Pangram to scan stories, which is a AI detection tool, so that helps. It's not 100% guaranteed. The moderators on HFY have found that if you use, how is it called? Editing software. There's two types of editing software. Grammarly is one of them. Grammarly has an inbuilt LLM. So if you follow Grammarly too closely, your written work will appear to be AI written, according to AI detectors. So just keep that in mind if you are an author. General Vexeth. Cool. I will note those. Hopefully they'll stick in my brain. But yeah, so I mean, I've heard stories of people trying to pass off AI content as their own. All right. How are we doing? We're doing okay. Okay. So today we're just going to be doing some TFOS and re-TFOS. Then tomorrow we'll do probably one of the series. Like I said, this week's going to be a bit of a rush all around, so I might have to end up recording before stream or after stream just to make up the difference. Well, not all of them. The ones that get noticed, I think, are. The ones that are obviously AI don't. Okie dokie. On to the story. Let's do this thing. Hello? Oh, there we go. What are you doing? Okay. Nope, nope, nope. Let's remove that. ASMR keyboard tapping. Alrighty, let's give this a bit of a whirl. Move the microphone just a little bit closer so They'll get that nice, deep, rich voice into the microphone. Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called A Nameless Prisoner, written by Redundant Fridge. Agreedus Supermax Prison Report. Current Warden, Elsie Litton Minor. Current Warden, Elsie Litton Minor. Current Deputy Warden of Operations, Srinagar Orkeval. Current Deputy Warden, Bricher Clue. Current Assistant Deputy Warden, Susel Todai. Today, we are receiving a new prisoner. Unknown race, unknown name, unknown language. The only information we have on him is the fact that he's 1.63 mesel, 5 foot 4 feet, or 163 centimeters, 10 limes, 145 pounds or 67 kilograms, and cannot be detained by ordinary methods. Additionally, he has no functional eyes due to a deep acid-burn scar from the top of his scalp to the midsection of his face. In spite of his diminutive stature, the strength he wields is one bordering on illegal genetic modification. There have been no proper estimations of the extent of this man's raw strength. Only observations and first-hand accounts. Therefore, take heed of the following lessons learned and exaggerate his capabilities if you value your life. This initial report shall be a drop of water in the growing list of charges and crimes he owns. Our subject was first discovered on Rytha within the capital city Lennis, where social unrest was transformed into a city-wide riot. Among all the reports around the capital city, one came from a group of rioters who had informed the dispatcher that they were being wiped out by an unknown alien. Once officers arrived at the strange call, they discovered our unarmed suspect had a single-handed... Once officers arrived at the strange call, they discovered our unarmed suspect had single-handedly crushed a rioting group of 34 individuals. When there was an attempt to apprehend him, the 2 responding officers were given such a brutal beating that they went comatose. Soon afterwards, a distress call was placed upon the blind individual, and he was besieged by a group of 15 riot officers. Even when he endured getting tased, gassed, shot with foam and rubber rounds, then run over by a transport vehicle, he managed to break the engine and almost overpowered all 15 officers. When the downed rioters were taken to the hospital, the doctors thought they had gotten into a massive traffic accident due to the severity of their injuries. Of the 34 rioters, 21 passed away from their injuries, and the others became permanently disabled in various fashions, all of which involved their joints. From the riot officers, their gear was severely damaged, with one officer having his arm crushed by the subject's grip strength alone. One died from a brain hemorrhage caused by a strike against his skull. One retired after being lifted up and slammed against the ground, causing a spinal fracture. Other officers were treated for concussions, broken fingers, and broken ribs, to say the least. He was detained inside the transport and wrapped around with specialized arm and leg cuffs, as well as a binding jacket that was chained to the interior. According to the 2 French officers guarding him at the time, the monster flexed so vigorously that he broke his jacket and would have broken through his cuffs if the 2 officers didn't gas him into unconsciousness. due to the public unrest and how the law worked in Rytha at the time. Our prisoner never received proper due process, and he was immediately transported to Riverside High Security State Prison. He was given 22 life sentences for each rioter killed, and the dead officer. An additional 20 cycles for every mutilation and disability he inflicted. A total of 440 cycles of prison time. There is also damage to private property and resisting arrest, each adding an additional cycle. The fact he is an undocumented illegal alien on Rytha soil added an additional 10 cycles to his sentence. He did not receive the death penalty due to the fact that Rytha justice system did not have one. But it was considered being considered being reinstated just for him. During his sentence at Riverside, he received multiple correctional reports for a multitude of charges. Due to a lack of communication, the correctional officers were never informed the subject was incapable of comprehending the standardized translation system. Thus, they had always assumed he willfully ignored commands and had to build a specific setup for compliance. A chamber was strapped to his head that injected a nerve agent, though they had the antidotes on hand. The COs commonly activated the nerve agent when the man was following orders. Sometimes they activated nerve gas in the middle of the night, devastating his sleep cycle. For weeks at a time, they allowed the prisoner to simmer in their own urine, fecal matter, and vomit, without letting him out for the typical recess period. In addition to that, during the one time that he was released for recess, another prisoner tried to fight him for smelling dreadful. What started as a single prisoner having his chest cavity caved into itself turned into a full riot within mere moments. Just as swiftly as with its beginning, it ended when our prisoner managed to break his head chamber and release the nerve gas across the entire yard. When our prisoner managed to break his head chamber and release the nerve agent across the entire yard. On that day, an investigation was launched on how 21 prisoners died from nerve gas, while the one at the center remained the only survivor. When the Riverside Prison's chain of command was temporarily replaced with stand-ins to more effectively handle the situation, the unnamed alien was plunged into solitary confinement. After the investigation was accomplished, the actions that the correctional officers had done as well as the chain of command were hidden, and the deaths of all 21 prisoners were pinned on the prisoner. On the prisoner we are receiving now. He is now serving an additional 21 life sentences and is under heavy surveillance until he reaches the confines of our prison. As of this report, the prisoner has been treated for bacterial infection in his bloodstream, has not received physical therapy, and continues to suffer from insomnia, seizures, and muscle twitches from excessive exposure to the nerve gas. Neurological damage could be measured. Neurological damages could not be measured. End of report. Inside of a spacious, well-organized office with cultural artifacts from across the galaxy, an unusual-looking alien was reading over documents dropped off by his deputy. Said documentation contained a picture of an unnamed prisoner. The alien could only be described as an eldritch compilation. Eldritch compilation of flesh and plant life given humanoid form. From reading the excerpts, his body shuddered in rage. "Fools, the lot of you!" His voice crawled across the foundation of his office. He slammed the documents against his desk and slowly began to transform his shape. "This happens time and time again. He went into a hidden locker behind a painting of a specific battlefield on a desert planet. He's a... Not entirely sure, I'm Kira. Maybe we're the Eldritch Horror. That's a normal trope in HFY. He went into a hidden locker behind a painting of a specific battlefield on a desert planet. His abominable appearance slowly turned coherent into that of an albino human. Within the locker were artifacts of that war, preserved for decades past. Preserved from decades past was a picture of himself in his damaged, horrid... Preserved from decades past was a picture of himself in his damaged, horrid form being supported by a diminutive albino human with a shit-eating grin. In spite of bleeding out himself, the human still had the gall and energy to smile in the face of hell. Below that was a makeshift dog tag that read Vasco Credo. Vasco Credo, the albino devil. Hung in pristine shape was that human's translator, which Elsie donned. He returned to his desk and began calling up contacts. One day, on the day of arrival, a squad of guards were escorting a solid metal coffin containing the Nameless prisoner. Immediately awaiting their arrival were the 4 top personnel in charge of the Supermax prison. That included Elsie, who was in fully concealed armored garment. The head guard approached Elsie and saluted him, but the warden did not return the gesture. "Open the coffin," he growled, and the head of guard flinched and stared in confusion. The rest of the guards did the same thing, while Elsie's chain of command chuckled at the reaction. The deputy warden, Brasha, a crustacean alien. Crustacean, that's a different story entirely. The deputy warden, Bracker, was a crustacean-like alien, clicked. "Recommend doing that," Cecil, a slender reptilian-like alien, nodded. "Trust us. You are not winning against that order." Syringa, a stocky avian-like alien, held up a plasma torch. Now, I'll do it my own self, because you're all too slow. The guards were still dumbfounded until Elsie dropped his Because you're... I'll do it me own self, because you're all too slow. The guards were still dumbfounded until Elsie dropped his underwear. Not underwear, headwear. Underwear. I'm sure it would be surprising if he dropped his underwear. The guards were still dumbfounded until Elsie dropped his headwear and revealed his human appearance. "Break the restraints, or I'm shoving all of you back from whence you came in that coffin." The warden's appearance flabbergasted the group of guards who, rather than argue about proper procedure, began to fearfully break the coffin open, with the other 3 wardens assisting in cracking it. Leaving the head guard and Elsie alone, the shapeshifter stared down at the alien and asked, "In the reports, I was never properly informed about how long the human remained in captivity. There are too many details missing, inconsistencies. For instance, I heard about a mass of prisoners in Riverside dying 10 cycles ago, but not recently. You would not happen to know what this is, guard? You would not happen to know what that is, guard?" The guard took a sharp intake of breath. He was in prison for... He was in prison for a total of 30 cycles, 10 in solitary confinement. Elsie raised a shaking open hand, causing the guard to brace himself. When nothing came, he cleared his throat and saw a blank expression on the shapeshifter's face, with a hand clenched hard and slowly lowering to his side. "That's all I need to know." Afterwards, the coffin was broken open and all the guards nimbly retreated and prepared for a fight of their lives while the 3 wardens helped the stumbling human out of his predicament. Elsie approached the human as the 3 officers set him down and allowed him room to breathe. The warden crouched down and spoke. Portuguese. Friend, what is your name? The human was on all fours and coughing profusely with staggering breathing. English. You are safe with me. The human in the midst was coughing blood. You are safe with me. The human in the midst of coughing blood paused. He raised a head to face Althea, but didn't say a word. French. I know your brethren. I will protect you. The human moved his mouth, but no words were coming out. He switched his position to his knees, and he feebly reached out, removing his right glove. Althea firmly grasped the human's hand. In a moment of respite, the battered human's entire body froze, but not from a seizure. For the first time in 30 cycles, he spoke Polish. Are you Althea? Are you? Althea nodded, feeling the man's body tremble to its core. Polish. Yes, I'm a human. Before he could finish, Althea was hugged by the human. He wailed loudly and broke down in front. He wailed loudly and broke down in front of all the dumbfounded guards and stalwart wardens. In the 30 cycles he had endured, all of it came crashing down and finally reached an unshakable wall of nameless prisoner. Polish. What is your name? His contorted, sniveling state of elation. The human spoke. The man swallowed and kept sniffling between his The man swallowed and kept sniffling between his invisible tears. Althea hugged the man back, still awaiting his answer. Dadel Hyla, in a calm, lowered voice, Althea vowed. Dadel Hyla, on my title and my name, I am bringing you back home to Earth. This caused Dazel to weep even further beyond. Allowing the man to release his baggage, the warden announced, Sringa, you have the watch. The avian cursed under his breath. Then the head guard stepped forward. Wait, you can't. One of the other guards grabbed him by the shoulder and shook his head rapidly. I am a dominion unto myself, Althea announced, causing everyone, even his wardens, to pause. The land beneath my feet is all the territory of Galaho. My will is the will of the Emperor, and my kinship born into an abyss diver, one who felled the devourer of the sky, one who lay dormant the devourer of the fog, he who burned of the sky, one who laid dormant down. He who burned and reborn from the flesh of a slaughtered god. Cursed to tread everlasting until time ceases. Under oath and lore of the seals that bind the ones beyond, won the soil of Glioho territory. Won the soil of Glioho territory, and the rights of blood that damn us eternal. This birthright of human Dadel Hyla is free. The guards, as his witness, stood stock still. Even the sky held her wind in the absolute authority of the warden. Without a single word, they took what remained of Dadel's cage and left. The wardens approached the two and wordlessly took them into the The wardens approached the two and wordlessly took them into the Ogridus Supermax prison. 1834, Police, Poland. Today marked the 36th anniversary of the disappearance of Dadel Hyla, beloved circus strongman, undefeated wrestler, and the strongest father in the world. In spite of his disability and his size, this mighty mouse of a man carved his feats of strength into the minds of people all over Europe, from Portugal all the way to Russia. Today marked the day that two men were seen walking the streets of Police. The younger folk paid no heed to the blind man being assisted, but they took notice of the strange albino one. The older one, however, could not believe their eyes. Today, from the depths of their minds, when they thought a ghost had raised itself from the great beyond, no fear took its place, as the town roared in celebration. Today, their hero returned. Today, my lost father returned. He brought a guest to the house. He was God in the house. End of story. And it's a bit of a head scratcher. Methinks. This birthright of human Dadal Hyla. Human Dadal Hyla. That's kind of what it seems. Good afternoon, Elijah. Hope you're doing well. I think the story was trying to do a bit too much with the material that it had. Okay. Not sure why the effects racket's taking so long. Yeah, no, I just need to update the schedule. We've got tons of stories. Good afternoon, Rev. Hope you're doing well. We've literally got thousands of stories to choose from. I just haven't moved it from my yes-no list to the schedule. But there is enough for today, and then I'll update it later for more. I'm glad to hear that, Rev. Kira, I hope everything goes well with that. Oh. What are we doing there? This birthright of human Dadal Hyla is free. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called A Nameless Prisoner. Bridge. Agreed as Supermax Prison Report. Agreed as Super... Agreed as... Agreed as Super... Agreed as Superman. Current Warden, Elsie Litmine. I think we gotta move the microphone a little bit like that. Maybe just a touch louder. Current Deputy Warden of Operations. Okay. Current Deputy Warden of... Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. End of story. Okay, I'm just rerunning the finishing procedure. I'll be right back. Just need to pop off quickly. Music chair. Okie dokie, just gonna try something. Okay, let's give that a bit of a try. Let's see how that sounds. Hopefully a bit smoother. I'm gonna struggle through just figuring out what the best way for this microphone is. Hopefully without blowing everyone's eardrums out. Oh, that doesn't work. Oh, sorry. Okay. So... something like that should work a lot better. Well, that's good to hear, Elijah. I mean, I could insert a joke here. Like, I don't know. Let's see. I heard it was a dead-end job. Okay. I do apologize for the bashing of the microphone. You can turn a bit like that. Oh. ASMR microphone setup. Okay. I think we're there. A little bit over there. Good morning, James. Hope you're doing well. Hopefully we're not going to be doing too loud. Okay. Oh, no. Alrighty. Right. I think we're sounding good. Awesome. R2799-2 Salvaged. Okay. Just make sure this isn't a sequel. Nope. Story number 2. Salvaged, written by For Use It Works. Story number 2. Salvaged, written by For Use It Works. Station Administrator Bob waited as the 5th set of bulkhead doors opened with a whoosh sound that he associated with airlocks. He glared at the military attaché at his side. He was annoyed that the officer would only identify herself as a code number, and doubly annoyed that there appeared to be a light. And doubly annoyed that there appeared to be a highly secret and heavily guarded quarantine facility hidden within his civilian trade and living habitat. Let me just double check that I haven't done the story before. I remember Bob from somewhere. Okay, we don't have a story called Salvaged. So maybe it's my imagination or somebody else used this name before. Within his civilian trade and living habitat. Granted, the habitat was both ancient and enormous, and it was common for forgotten chambers and equipment, or even unknown spaces with illicit operations in processes. With illicit operations in process to be discovered during maintenance or renovation. In process Okay. Getting a bit too much of a purr. So, just move that back a little bit like this. Move that pop filter a bit back. With the listen operation. With the illicit operations in process of being. Operations in process of. Okay, that's better. With the illicit operations in process to be discovered during maintenance or renovation. But something this be. But something. But something like this being unknown to him was beyond the pale. What was supposed to be in this space was a civilian astronomic. What was supposed to be in this place was something. What was supposed to be in this place was a civilian astrometric mapping and observation research company that had military and trade groups as clients. Attaché 55723 said, "Follow me, please," as she stepped through the doorway. Station Administrator Bob followed and found himself standing on a platform overlooking what appeared to be a mostly empty hangar. In the center of the hangar sat a small ship. It was both sleek and organic looking. The color patterns along the hull shifted and occasionally lit up with muted light. It appeared to be seriously damaged. Large sections looked scarred, maybe. Also, in the hangar were 3 shield generators that looked like they belonged on a heavy battle cruiser, were projecting a shield around the ship, and portable heavy weapons that were all pointed at it. "What is this?" Bob exploded Bob as he took in the spectacle before him. He barely stopped his neck frills from expanding in response to what the primitive part of his brain immediately registered as a threat. Attaché 55723, professionally neutral face. Professional neutral face briefly registered what may have been a smirk. Professional neutral face briefly registered what may have smirk. Attaché 55723. Attaché 55723's professionally neutral face briefly registered what may have been a smirk, and she answered, "It's a human scout vessel." Bob sputtered, What? Human? What is it doing here?" In a blandly neutral tone, Attaché 55723 replied, We found it damaged and non-functional on the far side of the system. We brought it here because it was the nearest site where we were... We brought it here because it was the nearest site where we had proper containment facilities, and we could get it... And we brought it here because it was the nearest site where we had proper containment facilities, and we could get it out of sight quickly. Before you say it, yes, this is not the operation that you were told would be here when we leased this space. Obviously, it was a cover story. I'll admit, though, this is not what we had planned for this site. Bob's voice rose to almost a squeal as he protested. You brought a human ship into my facility? There. You brought a human ship onto my facility. You brought a human ship into my facility. There are families here. This is a trading station. We just won an award for the best place to raise swarmlings. We just We just won an award for best place to raise spawnings in sector. Bob suddenly quailed and spoke softly. Why are you showing me this? Attaché 55723 took in a deep breath. We can no longer ensure operational security. Things may happen in the station that you need to know about, she explained. Bob's neck frills started twitching again as his mind started putting pieces together. And you need me to help explain away what exactly? I can only tell you so much, but this... I can only tell you so much, but this is the summary of events, Attaché 55723 began. We really... Story. We really are an astrometrics research facility, plus a little more. We detected an odd jump signature past the OPEC on the far side of the system star. We sent a probe to investigate. We found the ship derelict. It appears to have suffered from some freak accident. It appears to have suffered some freak accident in hyperspace. The propulsion physicists gave me a long technical theory about a 1 in a quadrillion event where a ship opens up jump point at the right angle to subspace superstring or some nonsense. Some nonsense. The point is that this ship probably had no intention of emerging anywhere near here, and the accident killed all the crew. We sent a recovery team. We sent out a recovery team. We put it into a commercial cargo container and brought it here for study. We have never gotten to see a human ship up close. Humans operate on the fringes of our territories, and we've only recently started trading with them. Once we got the ship here, we tried opening access hatches to no avail. We even tried cutting a hole in the hull, but it repaired itself faster than we could cut, without bringing in equipment that technically qualify as ship-to-ship weaponry. We noticed that the exterior damage from the accident was repairing itself, and the rate of repair was increasing. We are also very alarmed to note that equipment left unattended near the ship was disappearing. Bob interrupted. What do you mean disappearing? Attaché 55723 continued. When we reviewed the security video, the best way to describe it is that small tendrils extended from the ship's hull and ate it. You brought a cannibal ghost ship onto my station, Bob exploded. Oh, calm your frills, Bob, replied Attaché 55723. Then she quickly apologized. Sorry about that. That was unprofessional. It's no excuse, but I've had to tell the same story multiple times to a variety of senior officers very recently. I'll summarize more. The ship has been taking in mass from its surroundings to repair itself. We have been feeding it raw materials in order to keep it from absorbing our equipment or parts of the hangar. 10 hours ago, the ship's AI made contact with us. It has an interesting personality. You are telling me that the ship is sentient and can eat my station? And can eat my station if it gets hungry? Asked Bob incredulously. Leaf would never do that, replied Attaché 55723. He isn't rude. Leaf. Life. Leaf. He isn't rude. Leaf? The ship has a name? Asked Bob. Attaché 55723 responded. Of course it does. Why wouldn't it? Bob remained silent. Now for the reason that you are here, Administrator Bob, began the Attaché 55723. Leaf is, let's say, quirky, mischievous even. I'm not sure if this is due to the damage he suffered or if it's just the way human AIs are. But as he has repaired himself, he has been, and I quote, getting bored. We are at a bit of a stalemate. We don't want him to leave, as the opportunity for learning about his technology is priceless. He isn't well enough yet to travel on his own, and is dependent on us. and is dependent on us to keep supplying him with base matter for repairs. He doesn't seem to mind staying for a bit, but he keeps attempting to access station computer systems. He has gotten in several times that we know of before we caught him and blocked access. He doesn't appear to have any malicious intent. It is more like a child playing games. Okay. To be continued. It didn't get continued. Where's the link? Grr, he said. When I scanned it earlier, I just look for links. I don't look at to be continued. Mildly annoying. Okay, I'm not going to do any searching on that profile. It is more like a child playing. Aha, another series. Alright, this is also part of a series. Alright, there we go. TFOS 2800. That is a lot of videos. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the latest narration. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called... Thank you very much for the 27 months, James. It is very much appreciated. And yes, long live the Fishtopian actors. This particular story is called As Zkarth's View on Relations Between Humans and Death. Written by Victor Stein. You want to know what I saw in that wall? All your textbooks and all your textbooks and hollow recordings should give you everything you need. What point is there in forcing me to relive my people's darkest hours? Oh, you meant that kind of sight. There is an audible and tired sigh. I'm not entirely sure what to think about that either, but if it will help the other races understand our and the humans' relations along with our actions, and I suppose I have no choice. I suppose I have no choice. Let me ask you, Mr. Eulatriad, when do your psychopomps come to us? Psychopomps? When do our psychopomps come to us? Psychopomp? I suppose not many know what that word means. It is a human word in origin, after all. It refers to a being that collects and guides souls to the afterlife. So tell me, when do our psychopomps arrive? Correct. When we die, or in our last moments. How many psychopomps do the Yule Triad have? Just the Yule Triad-y. How many psychopomps do the Yule Triad have? Just the Yule Triad-y. Just the Yutade. Yutadi? Just the Yutadi. Now, I'll let you guess how many the humans have. No, that is far too low. I believe it is somewhere in the dozens. They have entire gods dedicated to this task. There is one in particular that is widely accepted across all humans. One that takes a far more active role than merely guiding them. It is known as the Grim Reaper. You'll understand why that fact is important shortly. Where to begin? As you know, the UTM sent their forces to us as the Gluttons were above our planet. You've seen the recordings, their dark, imposing suits, guns larger than several species in the Coalition. The warrior race were in awe. The warrior races were in awe by those show of force. We were frozen in fear, floating all for some marching, but just beyond each of these void-armored soldiers was a figure. One that sent chills down my spine and caused several of my comrades to actively hide and avoid the Terrans. These figures wore tattered black cloaks, ones that made the Terran armor seem pale. They carried a large bladed weapon on their backs, a long staff with a wicked and evil curved blade that could rend the universe in two. But their face, the veteran shivers. It was their faces, pale and skeletal. It was as if a walking corpse followed these soldiers. There were no eyes, only two portals into the abyss. And I stared into the pits and nearly went mad. When the other races didn't seem to notice these hooded vile figures, we realized what we were seeing. This was the human's embodiment of death, but none of them seemed ill, or even old for that matter. They were perfectly healthy. We couldn't comprehend this. Why does death follow people so full of life? The war and battles that followed taught us why. We were outgunned and outmanned, forced into desperate battles of defense in hellish trenches. Here is where we begin to learn. I was stationed in a strategic building alongside two humans, snipers to be exact. I was petrified and could barely manage to fire my own weapon into the enemy's ranks. I saw them make impossible shots, some from over a mile away. I was astonished. I was astonished by the accuracy and lethality. When I looked towards the two beside me, what I saw forever shocked the foundations of how the Zkarth viewed death. I saw their Reaper. It guided them. With a bony outstretched finger, it selected a target. The shot that followed would end the one they chose. I saw the Reaper grasp and shift the barrel of the human's gun to ensure a perfect shot. gun to ensure a perfect shot. Reading perfect. That night, as we gathered around at our camps and fires for rest, me and the Zkarth discussed what we saw. Every time a human had died in their reaper, every time a human had died, their reapers seemed to become more human. They would sit beside the fallen Terran as if they were a friend, and when the human passed, the reaper rose, its mouth opened, and as it released a silent scream towards the heavens. It would then take their bladed staff, a scythe, as I and many others later learned, quickly passed it through the Terran's body, then charged the enemy. The remaining human soldiers would then release their own savage cries and fire more rounds into the Kursk ranks. I heard other stories that night as well, but they were too fantastical to believe. How wrong I was. It wasn't until the final days of battle for Lythal, my homeworld, that I was on the front lines. I was to participate in one of the infamous charges the Terrans led. The Kursk ranks were made of a few different species they had conquered in the past, with the primary leadership mostly made of true Kursk. I saw 3 psychopomps belonging to the enemy, a 4-armed, sword-wielding reptilian that seemed to be made of fire, a savage avian with black talons the size of my arms, with plumage made of swirling reds and black. Then, what can only be described as a primordial beast with an impossible amount of limbs. The strangest and most terrifying thing, however, was that these beings of death, those of a completely different species, would try to claim the Terran's soul for their own, charging towards them with a hail of projectiles and plasma. Meanwhile, the Reapers also charged the enemy, slashing madly at them, and for each being that fell in the enemy's ranks, a scythe swept through their forms, causing the disappearance of a psychopomp corresponding to the being. The most gloriously fear-inducing image I recall is from the final charge. Is from the final charge that caused the curse back into the ships for retreat. Terran troops, their void black armor covered in blood of their enemies and their own, side by side with their grim reapers, charging the enemy, striking as one, slaying each enemy troop in perfect sync. A beautiful, horrifying, chaotic, bloody dance. The reapers, almost graceful in their arcs and swings, their cloaks further serving their unreal and grim beauty. The humans were savage berserkers, hacking apart troops or pummeling them into the ground. It was the most visceral and surreal moment of my life. The Grim Reapers stealing the souls of the enemy, aiding their human charges in survival and increasing their lethality. But do you wish to know what filled my people with both fear and awe? The Terran medics. Having a person in the middle of battle stitching together and saving the lives of others is the most contradictory thing I have seen. It was these medics that made enemy psychopomps despised the most. During the lull in firing, when I was towards the rear for resupply, I saw what my comrades had described before, something that I refused to believe when I heard it. There was a medic covered in blood and gore operating on a Zeway warrior, one that had taken the brunt of a plasma bomb. "Don't you dare die on me, you fish-faced motherfucker! Come on! It's just a few burns, I can fix it!" Above the Zeway circled the large predatory ocean beast, desperately trying to die. Desperately trying to dive at the Zeway warrior, jaws open to accept their soul. But they couldn't reach. It was as if a barrier was between the Zeway and the beast. "Clear!" The human shouted before a shock of electricity flowed through the Zeway body. Then just like that, the fish was gone, leaving only the Zeway writhing in pain. The Zeway survived the battle. I saw a human with most of his torso blown open, yards away from the relative safety of a trench. He was screaming in agony. The Reaper stood over him, scythe leveled at their throat. "I will not die here, you useless sack of crap." I was taken aback. The human seemed to be staring The human seemed to be staring directly at the Reaper. "Not today! Not now!" I watched as this human held one arm to his side to keep his organs in, and his other hand used a knife to drag himself to the trench. There, another Terran applied some sort of foam sealant and injected a large dose of painkillers into the soldier's system. He also lived. After the human's declaration, the Reaper returned the scythe to its back and followed the human, like a silent guard. As me and my fellow Zkarth grazed gazed across this line, we saw what should be impossible. Medics reviving those that would or should have been dead. Soldiers that refused to die and even insulted the ones that would guide their soul. My people can see death. We can see when it comes and goes. Thus our title of Witness of Death. But we cannot deny it. Neither can any other race. Every time a patient goes critical, there is no return. There is no way to revive them once. Different mic, same problem. There is no way. Greetings, ladies. There is no way to revive them once the heart stops. Many races tried before, using similar methods like human defibrillators, but they still could never bring back the dead. But humans, they scream, curse, and claw at the face of death. They insult it, and by their own will, defy it. They bring people back, even those not of their own kind. They look at death and refuse. Refuse to allow it to take what they have. Refuse to allow all that they have worked for turn to ash. The humans may not see death, but they can defy it. Yet, if you look into their cultures, you see another side. A side of them that makes no sense when compared to what I've said before. They also openly accept and welcome death. There is one day in particular culture that celebrates death. They are not immortal, for even if they can defy it, they cannot escape it. When their time comes, they mourn the loss. If their life was stolen, be it from war or murder, they become something else. They become something else. They will hunt and rage at those that would dare attack them. Chances are, if the law fails them, or the enemy has wronged them, they will come for the offenders and end them. We, Zkarth, may be the witness to death. Humans, however, are vessels of death. No species that has a reaper constantly following them, a people who stare down death and rebel. Beasts that would hold their reapers, Valkyries, and all other guides of the souls as allies. Beasts that hold their reapers, Valkyries, and all other guides of souls as allies. They may not be able to see their psychopons, but at times they can feel them. When a mother loses a child and their grief and rage engulf them. When a soldier loses his comrades and not even a tank can stop them. The moment any fool dares to threaten those the human holds dear, death is on their side. End of story. Thank you kindly, Kandaria. Very much appreciated. All right. Story number 2. Story number 2. It's the Human's Fault, written by Hane Dragon. The masked figure trembled slightly. The only movement since it had taken its seat, its dark blue cloak betraying nothing. My own son and daughter were sacrificed, not lost, not killed by our enemies, sacrificed. Do not claim that I was disloyal. The surrounding leaders of the Centauri Empire shot looks at each other, for in total they sat in a semicircle, the masked figure sitting at the center of this would-be circle instead of his empty seat at the far right. At the head sat the Emperor, Emperor of all reptilian Centauri, Emperor of 8 child worlds blessed under their rule. His throne a throne... His throne a throne of gold. His throne a throne of gold, steel, and bones. He gave a curt nod, and to his right the Inquisitor stood, a creature of average meter height. A grenouille cleared her throat, dressed in unassuming browns and reds which matched her thick fur. The antlers, which sprouted above her main eyes, glittered with a fresh coat of paint, her pursed lips a sign of placation. As the Inquisitor, I would be the first to assume betrayal. Her sweet trilling voice showing nothing of the cold-hearted bitch playing those chords. Be at peace. No one, not even I, accused the Empire's dagger of treason. Other faces grimaced their race's grimace. But an accounting must be made. The Emperor leaned forward and swept his clawed hand around, gesturing to the walls of the room. It has been 20 years since my father handed you the Empire's dagger in this very room. This heart of the Empire, 20 years, shouted the Emperor, leaning forward so much that he was nearly standing. The Emperor's tongue slowly slid in and out of his mouth as he tasted his words. For the first time, my dagger seems chipped. His piercing red reptilian eyes focused on the mask. Slowly, purposefully, he sat back down and eased his tensed muscles, the beautiful iguana-like face relaxing. The Duke, another Centauri, rose on his creaky old digitigrade legs and showed his support. My Emperor, I have seen enough wars to know that makes him a damn fine blade. His speech slurred as his breath passed. His speech slurred as his breath passed what remained of his cleanly cut-off nose. 20 years, and only one blemish. If the dagger couldn't succeed in the scheme, no one could. When it was clear the Duke had finished, the Genoy Inquisitor trilled, Dagger, explain if you would. Explain how you failed to entice the human beast to war. Perhaps we all can learn a lesson. The masked figure brought out a stone from beneath his robes. I will say what I must. Firstly, of my children. The rock clicked, and each of the watchers saw brief memories of the dagger's children. 21 years ago, the dagger had his first child. Found in the gutter at 4 of age, his broken wing left him with no real place in the world. Only the dagger knew his true face. The face of a young, large-eyed Zkarth. His naked body clothed, his wounds treated, his belly fed. The boy soon sported short, brightly colored fur once again. He was happy. As soon as the mask was on, he was no longer a Zkarth, brought into the safety of the cloak. He was an eye of the Empire, a tool of the dagger. 20 years ago, the dagger had a second child. A pregnant Grenoi had killed her mate. The unborn would die with her as she was cast in the pit. The dagger had caught the corpse in the dark before it struck the jagged stones. Just as the hope of life filled the Grenoi's eyes, its throat was sliced. Without delay, the dagger opened the corpse and retrieved the child. A day more, and she would have been born. She was brought to the cloak. She crushed his soul. She crushed his soul with her sweetness. Eventually, his due to the Empire won, and the mask was placed on her. No longer a Grenoi, another tool. 18 years ago, the dagger's third child is a high-born Centauri. She wasn't supposed to be. The dagger shouldn't have brought her to the cloak. At the age of 7. At the age of 7, she begged for safety, begged for vengeance. She had family still, not all gone. She vowed that they would soon. She vowed they would be soon enough. The dagger assented and became her new family. This tool took their mask. It didn't need placing. The dagger was not pleased at this, but still loves her. He is her only surviving family, after all. The Inquisitor Paul's needed... The Inquisitor's paw needed her neck hair. Any other children? No. 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 She looked unconvinced. The silent quillet. The silent quallet to her The silent quallet to her far left finally parted his fishy lips. Dagger, speak. Money wasted, time wasted. No more. Human peace, anchor peace. What gained, what hoped. The purr stood on his stumpy legs as his feathered manipulators pulled him off his chair. Waste, bad, he roared. His imperial uniform a little too gilded for anyone to take that outburst seriously. The Inquisitor didn't look at the purser's way, but the dagger knew she was wishing his fresh lips were sewn shut. Her damn trilling continued. Of course. So Empire's dagger, you have 3 children, all ready, all loyal. Humans and Enko await. Tell us what happened. The masked head turned slightly, looking at her. She smiled. Our Emperor awaits. The dagger took a moment for hate, then turned to the Emperor. My Emperor, as you know, my plan was simple. He raised the rock yet again. His second child was the first to fall. She melded her mask with a third Enko face, ears moving to top of the head. Ears moving to the top of the head, tail sprouting from her rear, body turning lithe and quick. She lived among them for 3 years, catching a spy in her net. She married him and came back to the Centauri Empire. Here they lived for a full year before we caught them. They were both put to death a year ago. His first child fell next. He also melded his mask with the Enko face. He took a little longer than his sister and didn't return with the spy until 3.5 years. Caught, both killed. Caught, both killed half a year ago. His third child, she had married the last spy they needed far in advance, melded with a beautiful Enko face. She caught their most suited. He brought them both back to the Centauri Empire, their lithe purple forms standing out amongst the citizenry. They had opened a diner on the Centauri homeworld. the spy being a chef assassin of sorts at times. They have lived on Homeworld. They have lived on Homeworld for 3 years now. The dagger had set the stage with his children's corpses. The Enko believed their chief assassin had slipped the net. They must believe it. If they believe it, those interrogating them will not suspect our hand any more than another. The human finally arrived, his giant form barely fitting through the entrance. The dagger was in his usual seat, sipping a bland Enko tea he pretended to love. His performance was perfect. Wide-eyed, staring at the human until noticed he quickly looked away. Just another patron. The human boomed his greeting and placed his order. An official of the Terran Concord, a hero of wars between his people, honored by his enemies and friends alike. The Enko spy had long since enticed him to the diner as a regular. Friends tell friends things, and spy is everyone's best. The poison was added. Each child had done her duty. Soon the loud human would be dead. I am confused. Am I missing something here? The story doesn't make sense? Okay. Soon the loud human Soon the It's very unclear what it's supposed to be. I get the idea, but execution's a bit... Soon the loud human would be dead. The spy would eventually run when the poison was found. Human spies would swarm and Enko's assassin past would be discovered. Sintani hands clean. War between humans and Enko would soon follow. The human failed to die. Whoa! His face reddening as he breathed in slowly and eyes watering. That's got some kick! End of story. Fair enough, Phoenix. Oh, stretch. Who am I to argue with? I mean, it's got 500, almost 600 updates. Who am I to argue with the updates? That's fair enough, but it shouldn't have to rely solely on you knowing specifically what the tropes are to guess what's happening. I don't think. Okay, I'm going to do some re-T-Fast now. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Read T-Plus, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called The Sound of Distant Guns, written by Commissar Cactus. The year is 2170, and the war is almost 2 years old. A letter comes today. There's only one sender that uses physical letters anymore, and only 2 reasons why people get letters from the government these days. You'll be going very far away, to camps and fields under strange skies. You may not ever see the ones you love. You whisper a prayer to what's above. You try not to squirm as your hair is shaved to almost nothing. You stand in line for hours on end, receiving your fatigues. It'll be 2 weeks before you can even touch a rifle. The instructors give you barely any sleep. You take your rest wherever you can get it. Billy Bob Space Trucker. 2 months later, you're being deployed. The troop ships are cramped with low ceilings. You sleep in a pod that barely looks big enough to fit a large dog. They drill you even more during these days of travel. You take a shuttle down. You take a shuttle ride down to the latest front. A planet called Zkarth. A planet called Zkarth. You are one enlisted man out of almost 3 million on this planet alone. This is the army. The first thing you hear is the sound of distant guns firing as the transport truck brings your platoon to the trench lines. You have a lot of digging to do, and the pounding of heavy artillery accompanies your work. You see your first alien. And you pull the trigger 3 times. No idea if you hit the damn thing, but there's always more behind it. You keep firing until the sergeant tells you to stop. Your first battle is over. The big guns still fire. Even from a kilometer behind you, they rattle the air. The campaign goes on for months. You watch as a man's jaw gets shot out, his tongue hanging numb and limp out of a plasma-charged wreck of flesh. You watch as a shell-shocked tank driver tries to retrieve his right leg from inside his burning vehicle, comrades pulling him away. You argue while on watch duty about whether that alien leaning on the wire is dead already. You argue while on watch duty about whether that alien leaning on the wire is dead already, or just bleeding out quietly. You fight many more battles. You fall asleep to the sound of distant guns. The year is now 2174, and the war is going badly. And the war is still going badly. You take some solace in the fact that there have been no vast trench lines since Zkarth. You ride in an armored personnel carrier now. You just stare at the inside of the vehicle for hours, checking your rifle over and over between naps. You hear the artillery guns firing. The 156s are really going at it now. The enemy respond with their own big guns, and you just listen to the armored carriers rides. And you just listen as the armored carrier rides towards the sound of shelling. You don't get panicked in combat now. You just shoot and follow orders. You try to stay alive and kill the damn slaving aliens before they can get you. So far, it's worked. Half of the squad aren't the same soldiers you started the war with, but you managed to stay alive into the 7th year of the war. You've only seen your family in person twice, in the breaks between campaigns that High Command allowed so the troops didn't go insane. They write you every week, ordinary messages of their daily lives and their worries about you that let you remember what it's like to not be at war. Your better half sends letters too, almost every day, and you respond. You can only get them in big monthly chunks when the courier ships come. so you save them all and read one message each day. You keep the backup storage chip in a pocket next to your heart. There's no way you could stop a gunshot, but it keeps you closer. But it keeps you closer together than apart. You think of them when you have doubts. You think about what would happen to them if the enemy got to your home planet. Those thoughts are what drive the rifle stock into your shoulder when the alien warriors crest the hill. You sleep in a foxhole, using your shrapnel coat as a blanket, and the cannon fire thunders on. The year is 2176, and the war is going better. You barely recognize anything on this planet. The buildings, the roads, the fields, none of it is human. The shell craters are universal, though. You recognize bombardment everywhere. There's people, too, alien ones. They run and hide, mostly. But you hear from the comrades that they can't be trusted. You've always known to sleep with your rifle. Now you keep your bayonet in your hand, too. You storm buildings, farmhouses, transit tunnels, anything that the lieutenant orders. You're a sergeant now, with your own squad, 11 others to keep alive. You manage to go through the battle after battle with only a few casualties. Others aren't so lucky. You remember the scorched stump at the end of the gunner's arm, and the whimpers of so many dying men. You just try and endure it. That's always been your strength, the strength of every human. The enemy tires, the enemy collapses, the enemy falls over and dies, not you. That's why you know you'll win this war. You see the AUG troopers, the super soldiers, the Echo class, whatever name you feel like calling them today. They've been more active in these last few months. Single squads spearheading assaults for entire mechanized battalions. You mopped up after their fights a couple of times. It's interesting to see what a shot pistol does to an alien nobleman from 2 meters away. You've gotten better, too. Mindlessly shooting is for fresh conscripts, and you're a sergeant. You manage your squads to fire on. You manage your squads to fire teams constantly. You make sure to teach trooper find. You make sure the tech troopers finds threats from the microdrones before they threat. You make sure the tech trooper finds threats with the microdrones before the threat finds you. You see obstacles demolished, tanks wrecked, and artillery called in, all in pursuit of victory, in pursuit of an end to the killing. The locals are a mixed bag. Citizens are unpleasant, if not hostile. Serfs are just apathetic, but the slaves are often partisan allies. Good ones, too. One time you never would have considered saying that about an alien. Things change. The local aliens don't seem to like seeing their government change, and their city shelled, though. And you keep close watch when the squads has to bunk down for the night in a housing block with a few dozen serfs and citizens. You finish reading today's letter from home, grip your rifle and blade tight, and fall asleep to the sound of the big guns pounding. The year is 2184. People say the war ended years ago. You have a family of your own now. You never touch a rifle outside of bi-weekly militia meetings. You have a bed now, not a foxhole or a dugout. It's supposed to be peacetime. You still fall asleep, hearing the sounds of distant guns. End of story. Oh. Story number 2. The Art of Not Fighting Humans, written by Dutch Guy Waffle. She sat down in the comfortable chair, not quite sure what she'd expected from the office of one of the former Lord Admirals of the Navy. It certainly wasn't the small room full of bookcases and artifacts she found herself in. She took a good look at the man himself, noticing lightning. Noticing the lightening of the feathers around his eyes, showing his age and wisdom. Noticing the lightening of feathers around his eyes, showing his age and wisdom according to old Moncati culture. Thank you for allowing this Thank you for allowing me this interview, Lord Admiral Carico, she said, dipping her head slightly. I understand it's a bit of a sore subject to you. The man sent her a smile, his small fangs on display in a rare show of openness. Please, Miss Iraq, it has been a long time since I held that title. Just Carico will suffice. She nodded. All right. Mr. Carico, do you mind if we begin? He waved his hands. By all means. She took a moment to compile her questions, activate a recording program, and take a deep breath. Mr. Carico, thank you for having me. You were the lead admiral in the Gamma Equina cluster campaign, and you described this in your new autobiography, The Art of Not Fighting Humans. Can you give us a quick summary of the factors leading up to the conflict? The former admiral sat back and looked out of the window. 2 decades ago, we came into conflict with the Federated Systems, the human government, over a small cluster to our galactic east. It was a small cluster, but very strategically important. The one who held it would have access to several jump points into the other space. Suffice to say that when the humans staked their claim, the assembly reached The assembly reacted badly. He looked at her again. There were some token negotiations, but in the end, the politicians trusted the military more than the diplomats. He chuckled. It never ceases to amuse me how quickly they changed their tune. So you immediately declared war on the Federated Systems? He took a moment to gather his thoughts. Yes. But I think it is important to nuance that statement a bit. She looked at him curiously. How so? He shifted in his seat. Well, war in those days meant something else to us. We were expecting to go into the cluster, fight some token battles, and then take the system and the industry with minimal loss of life. That is how it had gone between major galactic powers for centuries, you see. We knew the humans were militarily inferior, so we didn't expect the strategic kabash we found ourselves in, if you'll excuse my language. I see. So what happened that turned the campaign into such a carbash, as you put it? He took another moment. Have you ever heard of the Quintus Flavius Maximus? She shook her head, motivating him. Yeah, they're doing as well as can be. I think they're as good as they're gonna get. Dog is still very clingy and jumpy, but I don't think it's gonna change. She shook her head, motioning for him to continue. He was a human military technician who He was a human military technician who lived several millennia ago. He famously avoided battle with a feared enemy opponent.
Herrick frowned. Excuse me, he avoided battle? How did that help him win?
Well, what he did was deny the enemy direct confrontation, harassing him as he chased down his army. This way he preserved his own forces, while weakening the enemy.
Right. And this is what happened in Gamma Equina Cluster?
She asked. Yes, to an extent. The leader of the human forces, Commodore Ruth Beatty, if I remember correctly, knew she couldn't face us in open battle with her fleet of light patrol vessels. All she had was a heavy cruiser and 2 light carriers as frontline battle units. But when we jumped in there... But when we jumped in there, there was nobody there there was nobody there except automated weapon platforms and mines.
He shuddered, and his feathers rolled over his head.
And the drones, of course. Those never damned enough drones. Did you know that a human light carrier can hold up to 3,000 combat drones? Absolutely mad, I tell you.
Noticing that he was getting slightly off topic, she directed him back. And how did this impact the campaign as a whole?
It slowed us down, mostly. We thought them cowardly and craven for fleeing from battle. A battle that could end the war in one go. But they seemed adamant on bleeding us for every light second we took. Every time we entered the system, the human fleet, if you can call it that, was already leaving, having filled the system with minefields, drones, jammers, and the like. We lost most of the light units like that. Never mind the raids.
The former admiral shook his head.
It was frustrating, to say the least. Harrowing, even.
Harrowing? How?
Imagine the following, Miss Herrick. You are on a ship, a battleship, and the mighty assembled navy. Almost untouchable, unless the enemy has ships of equal size or a ship killer. You might be safe, but the other ships aren't. Imagine people, friends, family, what will you, on smaller ships dying to traps and hostiles that are gone before you. On smaller ships dying to traps and hostiles that are gone before you can orient the guns enough to do anything about them. They are dying, and you can do nothing about it.
There was a new glint in his eye, almost mad. That sounds, I don't have the words for it.
Exactly.
The man seemed almost happy that he said that he had someone to share the pain with.
Not so strange I retired after the war, is it?
Definitely not, sir. But why do you call it a debacle? The human fleet was destroyed in the Battle of Galatia. The human vessel was destroyed in the Battle of Galatia 11. The human fleet was destroyed in the Battle of Galatia 11-3, and mostly due to your strategic genius.
He huffed. Strategic genius. Is that what they call sacrificing genius? Strategic genius. Is that what they call sacrificing 10,000 lives to get a fleet of 3 ships and their escorts? The only reason we got them into direct battles was because there was a dockyard there. Thousands of civilians. They couldn't not protect them.
He sighed, the feathers by his mouth rustling.
I lost 7 cruisers, 12 frigates, and most of my corvette screen to the trip and that battle. Believe me, it wasn't a victory. It's a 30-year ceasefire, he said. He sagged. Believe me when I tell you, Miss Iraq, you don't fight humans. Humans fight you. End of story. Up dooty doot. Hydration is always important. Pew. Done. Alrighty. On to number next. 274. Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest edition of Free T-Fuss, where I take old stories I've narrated and update into modern audio standards. This particular story is called My Eyes, written by Kiev KRS. You understand the procedure, correct? Affirmative. Phylaxis coiled a skeptical tendril. Confirm for me. Repeat the procedure. Its partner, Tuskny, flared its mouthparts in a rough equivalent of a sigh. Activate immobilization array. Once subject is stationary, engage gravitation lensing and lift the subject aboard. Apply neurochemical stabilizers to counteract potential harm from the array. And sedate for continued study. Simple. Tuskny folded its upper arms crosswise. Are you satisfied? May we commence? We may. There is a subject to cannot. There is a subject to and Kratz west and closing swiftly. Stand by to activate the array. The jig is up. The news is out that they finally found me. The renegade who had it made retrieved for a bounty. Steve Jackson bobbed his head vigorously in time with the music, mouthing the lyrics as he cruised along the empty country road. His windows were down, and his old pickup speakers roared defiantly against the rush of the wind. He was pretty sure the cornstalks half a mile away were rocking out to sticks along with him as he drove past. Suddenly, a beam of light encircled his truck, a glowing circle 15 feet in diameter. Confused, he slammed on the brakes and brought the vehicle to a screeching halt. The scent of scorched rubber stung his nose as he stepped out of the truck and gazed skyward. There was nothing to see but a flare of light, or perhaps a series of lights. It was difficult to tell. Squinting made little difference against the harsh glare. With a shrug, he turned back to his truck, feeling an odd tingle at his heel when he moved. Had the ground just gotten lighter? Feeling unsettled by the odd phenomenon, Jackson rummaged around under the passenger seat and dug out a weathered-looking revolver, as well as his emergency flashlight, rated at something approaching 50,000 lumens. He was pretty sure that he could signal the goddamn moon with it if he had to. The subject moves. The subject moved. Relax. How is this possible?
How is that?
Who was the one who talked earlier? Okay, so Phalanx is the normal one. Normal voice, not normal alien.
The subject moved, Felix. How is that possible? I'm not certain. He did gaze directly into the array, did he not? He did. He was completely stationary right until I engaged the gravitation. Graviton.
Phalanx lashed its tendrils in confusion, thinking deeply. Focus the array and increase its power 20%. Perhaps this one is simply more resistant than others. When Jackson turned around, he noticed the circle of light had shrunk visibly around him, growing brighter as it did. Shielding his eyes with one hand, he looked upward again, trying to determine the source of the illumination, and flicked on his flashlight. A dark teardrop-shaped craft loomed above him, the size of a large RV. "Jesus fucking Christ!" he shouted, stumbling backwards out of the light. This time, there was no mistaking the floating sensation in his feet, or the small pebbles in the road that began to levitate, even as he fell on his arse. The moment he moved, they ceased their hovering and clattered back to the ground. Twiskney glared at his burned-out monitor with a very human expression of frustration. The illumination device in the being's hand had fried their underside optics and caused a small electrical fire in the monitor's circuits. The entire cabin smelled of smoldering copper. "The array is not working."
The array is not working, Flex. Land us. I'll retrieve this one in person.
Worry bordering on panic caused its partner's facial tendrils to flail madly. "Are you certain that is wise?"
He insults my pride with his clumsiness, and, Twigsney added, if he is somehow immune to the immobilization arrays, it is imperative that we capture him and deduce the source of his resistance.
Very well. I shall initiate... Very well. I shall initiate a landing sequence. Under its breath, Felix added with a grumble, "On your head be the consequences." The light above Jackson went out, plunging the road into darkness. Only the headlights of his truck offered visibility. Small insects danced in the beams. He heard the whisper of a breeze behind him and slowly rose to his feet, aiming the flashlight back the way he had come. The strange craft, alien man, fucking aliens, was just settling down on the pavement 20 yards down the road. A thin oval line appeared. A thin oval line appeared on its lower surface, weak orange light spilling out as it split it like a pizza wedges and folded inward. A being dropped from the portal, seeming to slow and hover just before its appendages touched the ground. Jackson lifted his pistol, aligning it with the flashlight in the manner that he'd seen cops do in those crime shows his girlfriend watched. The moment the flashlight hit the creature, however, it froze solidly in place. Cautiously, he approached the craft, keeping his light trained squarely on the alien. Up close, he could see that it was not entirely frozen, but its body was stiff and its eyes glassy, somehow entranced by the high-powered flashlight. "The hell are you?" he wondered aloud. To his surprise, the being replied immediately, and in perfect English. "I'm Twigsney, xenobiologist of the Lingarfi Collective." A trembling quality, not unlike fear, itched its words. "Please lower your array." Jackson didn't know what array it was talking about, but he wasn't about to let his guard down in front of an alien, especially when he was pretty sure it had been trying to abduct him. "What are you doing here? What were those lights all about?"
"The immobilization array for sake of capture and study for local organisms. I do not understand. It worked perfectly on the hoofed animals we obtained yesterday. Why are you immune?"
After a long silence, the dots connected in Jackson's head, and he threw back his head in a loud, braying laughter. "Oh, damn, dude, those are just deer. That bright light shit don't work on us."
"It does not?"
Jackson almost felt sorry for the diminutive whatever it was. Sexual? Nah, that wasn't right. Well, whatever it was, it had his pity. You ever had some city slickers BMW up your ass with an LED high beams? Way worse than the little spotlight, man. Way worse than your little spotlight, man.
He lowered his flashlight and returned to his truck. Minutes later, the rumbling engine receded into the night, accompanied by the harmonic wailing guitars. A gathering of angels appeared above my head. They sang to me the song of hope, and this is what they said. It was another 10 minutes before Twigsney shook off the effects of the human light and climbed unsteadily back into the ship. Felix glanced at his partner. You let it leave? I require more knowledge, the xenobiologist replied. What is a BMW? End of story.
Alien abduction. Gone wrong on biologist. Story number 2. How does that work? Written by 3 ducks in a man's suit. So what? How? Just explain this from the beginning, each step. How does this work? It took a moment before answering. I took a moment before answering to admire the translation equipment and the ethereals he used. I took a moment. So what?
So what? How? Just explain this from the beginning, each step. How does this work?
I took a moment before answering to admire the translation equipment the ethereals used. It conveyed a sense of confusion and curiosity very efficiently, considering their kind possessed no faces or audible voices at all. Well, I knelt over the antenna, eager to start explaining.
First, the microphone. First.
First, the microphone captures the sounds we want to transmit. That's this part right here, okay? Yeah, that's the one. So that captures the sounds and turns them into electrical energy. Then, how do I explain this bit? Right. Then that electrical energy flows through this antenna, which boosts it, and that generates electromagnetic radiation in the form of radio waves. With me so far, I struggle to perceive any kind of reaction from my explanation. With me so far, I struggle to perceive any kind of reaction to my explanation. Was he getting it? He, she, ethereals are genderless, right? They didn't even have physical forms. It just looked like a vaguely bluish splash of light drifting through the air, interspersed with diamond flashes, stars in a miniature galaxy. They really were quite beautiful. I decided on the spot that is one. I decided on the spot this one was female. I'm gonna call it a she. Meh, why not? So, anyway, Any receiver within range of that signal can intercept it with their own antennas and convert it back into electric current, which we can then be translated back into sound. And in this way, we can communicate across vast distances. We can communicate over vast distances. I stood back, hoping the translation software was picking up the beaming smile on my face and conveying accurately what I was saying.
Humanity has used this technology. Well,
that's a human speaking. Humanity has used this technology for centuries now. We have it down to a very fine science, and it's quite reliable. So what do you think?
It had surprised me to learn that ethereals had never heard of anything even close to the concept of radio, but I was happy to explain. Mr. Tracy. Her voice was vaguely feminine. I made the right choice. That's completely insane.
The smile froze on my face. Huh?
The sparkling lights within the ethereal swirling body jumped and danced. The translator picked up on it and gave her voice a prickly edge. That's not how the universe works at all. I blinked, words escaping me.
I mean, it works like, we've been using these since the 19th century, I guess. I know that must seem like the blink of an eye to a race as old as yours, but that's practically the dawn of technology age for us.
Mr. Tracy, there is nothing about this radio that should work at all. Compression waves do not work that way. Electricity does not work that way. Electromagnetic radiation does not work that way. I cleared my throat. What exactly was going on here? I thought the ethereal ambassador was just interested in human... I thought the ethereal ambassador was just interested in learning about Earth's history, but
I suppose. I suspected this when you told me about your...
I suspected this when you told me about how your combustion engines of old worked. The ambassador had calmed down somewhat, but there was a distinct tired edge in the translated voice now. Mr. Tracy, this radio does not work on electromagnetic waves at all. It's a psychic transmitter.
That's simply not possible.
I shook my head. Humans aren't psychic.
Humans aren't psychic at all, I'm afraid. We have no history of it at all, aside from the occasional crackpot who manages to convince the gullible that they can see the future or bend spoons or other similar tomfoolery. I chuckled, my laughter only petering out lamely when I realized I was the only one finding anything funny.
Mr. Tracy, the ethereal seemed to condense somewhat from her 12-foot-high indistinct form into something more solid and humanly proportioned. We detected a massive psychic field surrounding your race the moment we found you. It saturates your homeworld so heavily that most psychic species cannot even set foot on Earth without their minds melting from the strain of so much ambient energy. Your technology works. I held my breath, unsure what to think, because you all think it should work. Radios, cars, computers, I mean, really, that none of you stopped to think for a moment how ridiculous the idea of getting into space by riding an explosion was.
I struggled for a response, but found myself stuttering. But I
was an engineer for almost 20 years. This was nonsense. It was all science, right? 1 + 1 = 2, right? Did you not wonder why your advancement in technological process mirrored your growth in proportion? Did you not wonder why your advancement in technological progress mirrored your growth in population so closely? The more humans there were to believe in something, to contribute their own individual power to the greatest ever. To contribute their own individual power to the gestalt psychic field you have, the more your species has been able to bend and even break the fundamental laws of nature. Did you really think that you had managed to split the atom by using an explosion? Does that not sound completely insane even to your ears?
Well, when you put it like that,
I shuffled my feet, trying to ignore the way my entire worldview and education was being torn apart. And then there's the war of two halves. My head jerked up, the excuse of justifications already in my throat.
we didn't start that war.
After we won, they spent the next 4 years spinning their propaganda machine to make us look. To make us out as the aggressors.
Good afternoon, Terrell. Hope you're doing well.
You really should have had no chance there. A species barely into its space age, fighting a centuries-old established empire. Ludicrous. Guns that should have not worked. Damaged creatures that should not have been... That should have been immune to such kinetic weaponry in an environment where you should not have been able to stand in, let alone breathe. But you did so anyway because for some reason you think it's completely normal just to take a piece of your home atmosphere with you to other planets and breathe that. Honestly.
It was still difficult to decipher the exact emotions Ethereals felt, but I was learning fast. Just please try not... Just
please try not to get into any more fights, okay?
I nodded, feeling kind of dumb. How the heck was I going to explain the internet? End of story. Alrighty. And that is me for the day. Thank you all for spending your time with me. It is very much appreciated, especially in this day and age where everyone's attention is dragged in every which way. So, spending your time with me for such a long time is very much appreciated. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I will be back tomorrow. Cheers.